Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Inside the Birds TV with Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan, of course, ITB TV, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app. This is going to be another Ask ITB episode of ITB TV. You had questions. We think we have answers. We're going to do our best to guide you through what we think to your questions. So we appreciate everybody who has reached out. And again, we're going to be doing more of this as we go along. So in order to have your questions answered, you can find us on numerous platforms. You are definitely going to get a question answered if you leave your name and a review, a 5-star review on the Apple Podcast review platform. So give us a 5-star review, leave your name, leave your question. We promise we will answer it. There's also our Facebook page, the Inside the Birds Facebook community group. There's also our email address, which is insidethebirds@gmail.com. There's our website, insidethebirds.com, where there's a question bar where you can fill out your questions as well. And on Twitter, of course, just use the hashtag AskITB. You can find us at Inside Birds or at Caplan NFL or at Geoff Mosher NFL. So with all that being said, Adam, how you doing?
Good, man. No, I'm out in Las Vegas for an event. And
Nice.
yeah, I've been on sort of, I've been traveling a little bit, so I'm getting a little weary. But yeah, it's funny. We must have gotten like 6 Fletcher Cox questions about, is this time to trade him? And what should they do? And how should they handle it? The questions, we'll just address that first. Now's the time to trade him. If you're going to do it, you don't want to wait past this season. I mean, he's signed through 23. He has a very tradable contract in terms of the team receiving him, but the team that has him would take on, depending on how they listed, if they do it post June 1 designation with a trade, which you can do, you can half it over 2 years. It's about 24 to 25 million. So you split that, it's 12 to 13 million this year, and then the next year is the rest of it, which I'm sure they would do. Now, here's another question off that. I wonder, would there be any, if we look at their roster, would there any, not that you would call them cap casualties, those generally don't exist anymore unless you're really over the cap.
Right.
They're going to be in good shape. They're going to have anywhere between 20 and 25 million of cap space. As we stand right now, it's always fluid, but that's what we were told the range is. So is there anyone who you could see them releasing?
I think just because they are a high-priced player who's not as productive.
Yeah,
wow, they have a lot of impending free agents anyway. So as far as a long-term guy, let's go through it. Let's go through on offense. Any quarterbacks they would release? No, I don't see that. Any running backs they would release? Just outright release? No, I don't see that. Anybody on the offensive line? I think that they would first look to trade someone before releasing, but they do have a little bit of a logjam at guard. I don't know what's going to happen with both Dickerson, Sayamalu, Driscoll, and if Kelsey comes back, you can't move somebody out there. What are you going to do? I would think that they could make a trade if they wanted to and not have to release somebody.
Yeah, well, Dickerson definitely will start. That's not going to be a question.
Dickerson's going to start, right.
Right. Sayamalu is the one. Like, what do you do? He's got a very cheap contract, very team-friendly. And the thing is, he just has trouble staying healthy. It's a good player, and we know he could play center or guard. And then defensively,
but real quick, if you wanted to, if you were convinced that you were better off moving forward with Driscoll at right guard and Landon Dickerson at left guard, and you didn't want to have Sayamalu on your bench making enough to at least be a starter, I would think you wouldn't really. I think you would have to think you'd be able to get something for him, and it wouldn't be an outright release. That's what I would think.
So Sayamalu is this 22 is the last year of his deal. He's making just under $5 million for the season, 4.978 million. Tradable number for a starting guard, solid player.
Sure.
Yeah, there would be some dead money, but in about $5 million. But in the end, they have flexibility to do something with Sayamalu. That would be the one guy where if you looked at it, and I know they love to have depth, and it's not that they need to trade him and that they're going to be in good enough cap shape. They don't have to do anything. But a guy like that should be starting, I think. It's just, he's got that injury here. And then anyone defense? Is there anyone defense?
I don't think they're going to release Brandon Graham. They don't have enough
no way. No,
depth, then they just wouldn't do it.
No way.
I don't think they're going to release Fletch. In fact,
No way.
I think that
No
if they
way
can't trade him for a 3 or better, then they
Yeah.
keep him because it's expensive to release him. So if you can't get anything out of it, you might as well keep him.
The cap hit is really bad if they just I don't see that happening.
Right.
I would see now if they would entertain a trade, the word we got is that they first the cap hit was so significant with the dead money they couldn't really do it anyway. They'd have to do some other things they would have to restructure some other contracts. This is last season. It's more palatable now. It's still not great if they trade him, but the question would be, okay, if they do trade him, we know Hargrave's starting, and as you said many times, and you're right, this might be the time to extend his contract because this will be the last year of his deal. He's been a really good, very good player, no doubt. I don't know that Milton Williams is, as much as they like him, they really like him in that third D tackle role. I don't know if he's ready to be a full-time starter, so they would have to address it. And Tui Pelotu didn't contribute at all. So he's a non-entity right now. So they would have to do something pretty significant, I think, at D tackle. In fact, in the draft, I would look at it.
Yeah, I would think so. But no, I don't think that there's any underperforming veterans who are just, releasable. The only underperforming veteran really is a Fletcher Cox, but he's not releasable based on, you're not saving any money by it. So it's not a cap casualty situation. And of course, we know Steven Nelson's a free agent, and both safeties are free agents, and Alex Singleton's a restricted free agent, I believe, right?
Yes.
So so there really isn't other than Graham and Cox, and neither of those guys I see getting released. So I guess that's a good situation for the Eagles. They don't have kind of albatrosses all over the 53-man roster, just taking up space with money. So that's a good thing. But that also shows that the transition that they're in. So that's how I see it with Fletcher Cox. I see either you trade him for something of value, a 3 or a higher, or you're just keeping him and letting him play out one more year. And then maybe next year you talk about, perhaps a release if you can't get value, or just trading him for whatever somebody willing to give you.
So the next question would be from, from our website where they fill out the form, for the question for Ask ITB.
InsideTheBirds.com.
Right. So the question is, just in terms of Gannon, from Chris Barakal. We talked a year ago when they hired him that he was a guy that would draw significant interest from other teams to be a head coach. Now, theoretically, after the season he had, you wouldn't think that would be the case. I still believe that he underwhelmed. I thought the Gannon as a D coordinator. Now, some people would argue, and I wouldn't disagree, that he didn't work with a lot of talent. Their D line obviously is talented, though the sack numbers were really underachieving. Pressure numbers better, but the sack numbers better, not very good. Lack of forced turnovers. He just was not as advertised. He wasn't. Let's call it like it is. Now, the question would be going forward, because Chris asked, and I'm guessing it's because of the head coaching. What did he have? 3 interviews? What was it?
Minnesota, Denver, and Houston.
Right. So, how do you deal? This is a really interesting question, very thoughtful here, because they're trying to build for the future. If this guy could be leaving, schematically, what are they going to be? What are they going to be running? Because there's usually small tweaks each year. Long term, like how do you develop this defense when you don't know where if he's going to be the guy for the long term?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, look, I think that in general, the big picture is to get better on defense with better defensive personnel, and let the coordinator adjust his personnel to scheme. In some ways, Gannon did that. He took a 4-3 defense that Jim Schwartz had built over a few years with Howie, and adapted it to what he does, which is having multiple fronts, which Jim really didn't do a whole lot of. Obviously Gannon had multiple fronts. There were times he was 5-2, times he was 5-1, times he was 4-3 wide 9 at the end of the year on third down. So he was able to do that. And I think 85% of players in the NFL, Adam, on defense can play in almost any scheme. It's just that if you're really specific, if you really play a strict Tampa 2, yeah, you're going to want a defensive lineman who can swallow up 2 offensive linemen. Not everybody plays that though. A pure strict 100% Tampa 2. Even Matt Eberflus, I don't think does that 100% of the time. So, linebackers, cornerback, safety, just get great athletes and good players, and the coordinators will figure it out.
Correct. I would say that just to move this along here, in year 2, he's going to have to be more aggressive. There's just, and the front office has to do its job in getting him better players. We talked about this in the last show. They've got a lot of holes on defense. They have a lack of overall talent at linebacker, need better depth at corner. Safety is a problem, obviously, because they just don't have a lot of guys under contract. They got to get younger and more athletic and better. So that's a good question. And then the next one, let me see.
It would help by the way, if they could find an on-the-ball linebacker who did have some experience as a blitzer or a nose to get to the quarterback a little bit, like when they drafted Michael Kendricks, who in college had played an inside linebacker, but also a rush linebacker position. And Mike had a pretty good nose for how to get to the quarterback on certain blitzes. They didn't blitz him a ton, but when they did, he knew how to get there. Same with Jordan Hicks. He was pretty good at getting at the quarterback. I mean, these guys can play in 4-3 schemes, but when they're called upon, right, on third down to rush be an extra rusher, you would like to see that they got a little bit of an idea on angles, moves, pass rush moves, stunts, twists, things, how to work in space and get to the quarterback.
For right, and that's the thing, is that's the kind of stuff we were expecting to see in year 1. Stunts and more disguise. We saw more disguise as the season went along, but it still was not what we were expecting. It was partially what we were expecting from Gannon, but we know the Eagles, and that's just what the guy asked and it made the statement in the email about. I mean, Jeffrey Lurie and the Eagles were really expecting more out of Gannon. We knew that Lurie brought Gannon's name up in the interview with Sirianni. And, Gannon's still a highly thought of guy, but he hasn't really backed that up with a performance so far. But I'd like to see if they gave him the talent, how good this guy could be, and could he be more aggressive? Because we know in the second half he coached more aggressively, but still wasn't what we were expecting. So we'll see what happens. And then, okay, here's another question from Jeff Greenbaum. This is though it's a Rams question. This applies to not only the Eagles but a lot of teams. So Jeff Greenbaum says, why does everyone talk about how great Les Snead's later round picks are? The big stars are Kupp, Donald, Ramsey trade, Von Miller trade, Stafford trade, Whitworth free agency. Well, but here's the thing. If you really do look at it, a lot of the supporting players, Greg Gaines had to start for Sebastian Joseph Day. He was a 6th rounder, by the way. Gaines did a good job. Joseph Day was their starting nose tackle. It's a 6th round pick. Troy Reader was an undrafted free agent starting. Dion was their 3rd or 4th corner, was an undrafted free agent. You might have seen him on Hard Knocks. Nick Scott had to play a lot late in the season. He was a 7th round pick. They had Justin Hollins. They didn't draft him. He was a guy that they got off waivers from Denver. Bryson Hopkins had to play in the Super Bowl. Did a good job, by the way. Brad's son. Yeah. Kendall Blanton was the guy who came out of nowhere who had to fill in. Did a good job for Tyler Higbee. On their offensive line, Brian Allen's a 4th round pick. David Edwards is a 5th round pick. So I'm not sure what you're looking at. I mean, he's Brandon Powell's their their kickoff returner, punt returner, who's street free agent. So they've hit on some later round picks and some undrafted free agents. Not every pick is going to be high that starts. I mean, it's hard to build a team like that.
Yeah, I also mentioned they hit on some guys who aren't with them. Just, naturally they left John Johnson, who was a good safety. I think he was signed by the Browns this past offseason, right?
Huge deal, right? Was he a 3rd round?
Yeah, he was a 3rd round pick. I mean, I don't think he's a great drafter. I'm not putting him up with the Ravens and the Steelers at all. I mean, I think he's better at just acquiring talent, being aggressive, figuring out contracts that work for him than he is a great drafter. But he's not. I wouldn't call him a terrible drafter either.
No, he's top 10. So now let's switch us to the Eagles, right? If you look at their key contributors, how many guys were lower round picks or undrafted free agents? Right, Greg Ward's been a nice story. I know he hasn't done much in the last 2 seasons, but still, years ago, he did contribute. He was an undrafted free agent, worked his way up the roster after being on the practice squad for several years. Quez Watkins, 6th-round pick. That's a late rounder. Kelsey, no, I know, obviously he was drafted in 11, but he's a 6th-round pick. Herbig, undrafted free agent. Suopeta, who's made the team, undrafted free agent.
Mailata, 7th-rounder.
7th-rounder, yeah, that's the best ever. Like, you're not going to beat that one. That's impossible. Defensively, Josh Sweat, 4th-round pick. And remember, he had a severe knee issue. Milton Williams, okay, 3rd-round pick. So that's a 3rd-rounder. T.J. Edwards, a starter, an undrafted free agent. The Eagles do have a pretty good history. Jalen Mills was a 7th-rounder, right?
Jalen Mills was a 7th-round
starter
pick.
Super Bowl, right? Jack Stoll, undrafted free agent, who's the Y tight end. Kenny Gainwell, 5th-round pick, who definitely the numbers for a while there would support that he was going to be a very good 5th-round pick. I still think he'll be better.
Yeah.
Boston Scott, who was an undrafted free agent, who they signed off the Saints practice squad 3 years ago. Look, every team does this. Not every starter is going to be in the top 3 rounds, and neither will it be the key contributors to your football team.
Yeah, yeah. I think most teams are. What is it they say? Like 60% of the league is players who are drafted in the 4th round or lower.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, there's an interesting statistic out there. I mean, you really have to hit on low round, not all of them, but some low round picks, because that's how you got 53 people on a roster. You can only have so many 1st and 2nd round picks out of those 53. So, yeah. No, I don't. When you think of the best drafting teams or GMs out there, there's Kevin Colbert from the Steelers. There's DeCosta from the Ravens. I think Tom Telesco is an excellent drafter. He's with the Chargers. Now, he may not be a great GM because for whatever reason they can't build a sustainable roster that wins a lot. I mean, they go from Phillip Rivers to now Justin Herbert. You think they should be in the playoffs every year, but they're not. But they do an excellent job with drafting. So I put Telesco just as a drafter up there. I think John Schneider has been a very good drafter. Just hasn't really hit the offensive line very well in the last few years. Well, they've had floating GMs, but there's no doubt the Jaguars have hit on a lot of draft picks. They just can't keep them. From Allen Robinson to Ngakoue to to Jalen Ramsey. I mean, they're always drafting high, so you should get these picks. But they have talent. Josh Allen's a good player. They're a pass rusher.
Very talented. Yeah, very talented.
Yeah, and then of course James Robinson was a good late round pick for them. Yeah, or undrafted pick. Right? I mean, yeah, they've just had a whole lot of issues everywhere else.
Yeah, you got to hit, because first of all, you're not going to get every single draft pick right in the first 3 rounds. You really have to hit on later round picks, and the Eagles have done very well under Roseman in terms of undrafted free agents. They usually have a guy who will make it. I mean, they've drafted. I mean, they've done a good job of identifying certain players.
Yep.
And you have to do that because it's. And also the great thing about that is they're under very low salary, and that's very helpful for your cap.
Yeah.
So no, that's an interesting question, but Jeffrey, what I tell you is no, they've done. It's easy. I think what you're talking about is people give them way too much credit because they get Donald Wright. Well, we're the stars for the backups. If you want to look, there's no Jason Kelsey on the roster. They nailed in the 6th round. Those things really happen. But they have plenty of supporting players who are lower round picks. All right, one more question. I like this one. I'll be very interested to see what your response will be. Because this one will have to make you and I think. We'll take 2 minutes to do this. From Zach Hafler from our message board. Who are each of your favorite all-time Eagles? I would say, because I grew up in Philly, Bill Bergey, 66. Tore his ACL, unfortunately, in 80. I'd have to go back and look. I don't believe he played in the Super Bowl. I don't believe he was with the championship team in 1980. Yeah, I don't think so. I'd have to look it up, but I don't believe so. I think he tore his ACL before that. I'd say Mike Quick, 82. People forget how great Quick to me would have been a Hall of Famer if he just had a bad knee, so his career was short. And he was so explosive. It's funny. I remember Quick saying, I think he might have timed in the 4.5s, but his football speed was way better those would be just two of them. And 17, Harold Carmichael, because he and Jaws together, and obviously Jaws number 7. But Harold, number 17, at 6'7", 6'8", what he was able to do, and that's why he made the Hall of Fame. If you just looked at his numbers for that era, he's not Cooper Kupp, but he's a top 5 to top 7 receiver in today's NFL, because that's how great he was for his time. And again, they didn't throw the ball a lot back then.
Right. You said Carmichael, right?
Yeah, 17 Carmichael.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And by the way, one of the greatest guys you'll ever meet, Harold Carmichael. Just awesome. And Mike Quick. Unbelievable human beings. So I think that I'll change it from favorite
B West
to
too. B West. Sorry, my bad. B West.
You just stole my thunder. I was going to say the most talented Eagle I think I've covered, as far as just
really.
Well, I'm going to separate Terrell Owens, because to me he was an Eagle, but he was here for like 13 games, right? So if you put T.O. aside, the most talented Eagle I think since I've started covering the team in 2005 has been Brian Westbrook. I just thought he was if his knees were better, I think he would have been right up there with one of the all-time greats. You know, he was at the same time, he was at the peak of his career, sort of the same time LaDainian Tomlinson was, and I think that pound for pound, he's as good as LaDainian Tomlinson. Different type. I mean, he caught the ball and more and was used more in the passing game than LT. But I just think if his knees had held up in that Andy Reid offense, he would have been a monster for 6, 7, 8 years if he could have been. He was already a monster for 3 or 4. His 2006 and 2007 seasons were 2 of the best seasons I've ever seen from an Eagle. You know, there was Carson Wentz in 2017, but again, that was only 1 year and he didn't really replicate that. So I can't put him in that category. I could put Carson Wentz in the category of greatest seasons that I've ever seen. But as far as greatest Eagle for over a longer period of time, it's got to be there's Jason Kelsey but Brian Westbrook to me is the best.
I would say B West and Owens were probably the 2 best offensive players I covered for the Eagles. Westbrook, that run. In fact, I remember when we had him on ITB TV a year ago, and we were doing research for it. It shocked me the high touch number that he must have. I'd have to again look it up, but I could have sworn for over 3 years. Average touches per game, I think it was between 23 and 25, which you never would have believed. I would have guessed 15 to 17 because he was a smaller player. But as B West told us, he built his body up physically. I was blown away by it. His juke moves and his ability to make unblocked defenders miss was just something like to see him up close. And then to finish us off, when I saw him at the Senior Bowl in 2002, I remember thinking how small he was. He had not built his body up. And I remember, I don't think he wants it out who told him this, but one of the coaches told him there. I think he might have told the story. I don't know if he said the name of the coach, but that the guy said he would only be a special teams returner, never would make it as a running back. I mean, think about that, hearing that. And of course he did. And he's one of the best players in Eagles history. It's and you nailed it. The knee, just like with Mike Quick, the significant knee issue, the swelling from the ACL reconstruction from Villanova, it just limited what he can do. But again, and I also would say he would be an NFL Pro Football Hall of Famer guy, because if he could have played maybe, because look at Tony Boselli, right? He only played 6 years, and he got in.
Yeah.
Just think about it. We'd have to look this up, but maybe a couple more years, and he could have got strong consideration. It's just too bad with the knee.
Some of my favorite guys just to interview, to talk at their locker, would be Lito Shepherd. Lito and Sheldon were great. They were like they could be like the Muppets version of Waldorf and Statler sometimes. If you got them on the same subject, they were just like be sarcastic, and Sheldon never held back on anything. And Lito told the funniest stories of his life growing up, and they were hysterical. So I would put those 2 in a category. Michael Vick was really awesome. Always liked spending time there. The offensive line locker part was always the upper right corner of the room, and guys like Trey and Todd Harrimans and Runyon. Runyon was great. He was fantastic. Jamal Jackson is funny. I don't know if people realize how low-key funny Jack can be, but he's really, really funny. And I'm trying to think. Oh, D'Amico Ryan.
Trey.
Oh yeah, I said Trey Thomas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but tell me, like,
Trey didn't talk a lot though. Trey was not a big media guy. Like he was very,
he does now though.
like to the point. Yeah, he talks plenty now. But as he'll tell you, when he played the game, he didn't even know what Donovan was doing. He was just always focused on the guy he was blocking, right? So yeah, he talks a lot more now.
Runyon was very funny. I'd have to get his permission. There's one story in particular that I would love to tell. I'd like to get him. I think he would do it. I think when I see him next, I'll ask him, because I know he works for the NFL, but he's done interviews locally for WIP. So I'd like to have him on. He's a great storyteller, and he, like Trey, he's underrated, funny, very understated, but very funny.
Yep.
And I didn't know that about him until late in his career with the Eagles, and then obviously at events, talking to him, he would tell stories, and boy, I'd love to get a round table with like 5 or 6 ex-Eagles. How great.
We should do one just of offensive linemen and just get line talk going. It would be great.
Okay, Trey, Runyon,
Trey, Todd, Jamal.
Jamal's great.
Yeah. We maybe
Kelsey when he retires.
Kelsey when he retires.
Yeah.
Right. And D'Amico Ryans and Vic. Those were great. I always enjoyed talking to those guys at their locker. They were just really cool.
Yeah, D'Amico's gonna be head coach next year. He's brilliant.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, wow, what a great job he did with the Niners in his first year as D coordinator. Yeah, it's phenomenal. So good stuff. Yeah, that was a good question, Zach. We took it a little bit farther than you probably were looking for, but that's kind of what we do with questions. They make us think. I love the question. We've never really addressed it much before. This is our 5th year doing this.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna once we get closer to the draft, we'll have some idea of kind of what we'll be doing. But we're definitely gonna get some ex-players in. I know some people asked us what other ex-players could we get involved with us.
Mm-hmm.
We know we want to get Mike Mamula going. I know Mike pretty well. He's got great stories to tell. Funny guy. He lives in the area, and we'll figure it out. We'll get some other guys involved.
Awesome. All right, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code ITB. Bet just $1 on any NBA team and get $150 in free bets if they win. That's promo code ITB at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Just got to be 21 or older. Pennsylvania only. New customer only. Minimum $5 deposit. Restrictions apply. In partnership with Meadows Racetrack and Casino. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. That's it. We're out of questions for now. We'll do this again very soon. We'll probably answer some on some future podcasts as well. The next Inside the Birds podcast will drop Monday morning, 6 a.m. with Adam and myself. So have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll catch you on the next Inside the Birds TV.